My name is Amira, and this is my final project for Anthropology, the Archaeology of Death. That right there is my cat Sabrina. She will be joining us for this presentation. The topic I chose to cover is the Salem witch trials. Now, you're probably asking, well, what were the Salem witch trials? The Salem witch trials is exactly what the name suggests. It was a series of judicial trials that took place in Salem, Massachusetts. And what's especially shocking is, for a period of time that caused much death and devastation, it only lasted a little bit of time, specifically from the summer of 1692 to the fall of 1693. That is according to the Peabody Essex Museum. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what does the Salem witch trials have to do with the archaeology of death? And I am more than happy to answer that question. So, as you know, I am a Muslim and I am a very religious person. And as a religious person, I have always been fascinated by the dichotomy that religion can bring out in people. Meaning, for people like myself, being a Muslim truly brings me nothing but peace. But for other people, their faith only brings out violence. And honestly, what I would consider the worst aspects of humanity, truly showcasing their darkest desires and depravity. And unfortunately, like many cases, those dark desires and depravity leads to death. It leads to needless bloodshed, and sadly, that occurred during the Salem witch trials, which unfortunately is why discussing the Salem witch trials is relevant to our current class. Now, as the name suggests, the Salem witch trials were just that, witch trials. Innocent people were accused of being witches, and the exact number of that does vary. Historians cannot agree on the exact amount of people that were accused of being witches during the trials. Some sites estimate that 159 people were accused. Others estimate that over 160. And then other sites estimate between 144 and 185. Now, this could have occurred for a few reasons. It could be that the people of Salem were ashamed of this period in their history and such that they didn't want to repeat it by writing it down. Meaning that if perhaps people read about what they did, they might, get the idea to repeat it. That, and it also prevents people from learning about it, as the definition of history is learning from the living record. And by living record, that means written record. So if there is no written record, then nobody can truly learn what happened. So, even though I said that scholars and historians cannot agree on how many people were accused, they also can't agree on how many people died. For example, one of my sources cited that only 19 people were killed. However, two sources, specifically the Salem Witch Trials Documentary Archive and Transcription Project, along with the Peabody Essex Museum, both agreed that 25 people died during the Salem Witch Trials. Now, the previous source that I referenced, a woman named Elizabeth Yuko, stated that only 19 people died. But what I think she was truly alluding to was that only 19 people were executed by hanging. The remaining people, most of them unfortunately died in jail due to the poor conditions, but one man named Giles Corey was tortured to death, specifically by having large stones pressed upon his body. But again, many people will look at the number of 25 and say that's not that many. But these were 25 people. They never should have died, but because of fear, their lives ended. My closing thoughts. I guess you can tell by what I have been talking about is that there is no clear and concrete answer about anything when it comes to the Salem witch trials. From historians arguing about the number of those accused, to historians arguing about the amount of people died, to historians finally arguing about what really caused this. Now, the most common answer and the most believed upon answer is that it was because of religious fear. Specifically, it was because of the people of Salem's interpretation of Christianity. They believed that witches were inherently evil and products of the devil, and thus must be eradicated from their community. But most interestingly, another historian by the name of Richard Lanter theorized that nobody actually believed witches were real, and instead took this as an opportunity to kill people that they didn't like in their town and to advance socially. But again, we weren't there, and the records themselves are severely lacking. Even with all the work that I did, I'm still confused on what exactly were the Salem witch trials. We know that they were a series of trials to see whether or not people were witches, but really that's it. After all, historians can't agree on how many were accused, how many truly died, and why. And unfortunately, that's where we're going to be ending here. Sometimes things aren't neatly wrapped up in a bow, and that includes this topic. However, at least for me, please excuse me. I'm sorry for taking that pause. The topic does make me quite emotional, and it's just, this truly was a tragedy. Again, 25 people were killed in the prime of their life. Their future potential was robbed of them, and it was because of God. Now, I'm not saying we put God on trial, as how would you do that? But it was because of people's interpretation of God, specifically them using the idea of religion and God to justify deaths through mass hysteria and fear. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have an amazing night. Sabrina thanks you for joining our presentation.